If I say starboard, you have to face to the front of the ship, and starboard is on the right hand side, and port side is on the left hand side. We have all a little mnemonic. Port and left both have four letters, so maybe that can help you with this. Now, you can see also how busy it is here with the shipping, and then we have the low water situations as well. So it is not a difficult if you like to try with them. Yeah, we're going to raise them. Alright, now let's start with, actually, on the opposite side of the Rhine, you have the town of Rhine and Rhine. On top of the hill, you can see the chapel, a Roman chapel from 1666. And the Rhine is bigger, as you can see. It's a bigger town. It is actually made famous by a lady and her birthday in the garden. She lived about 1,000 years ago, and I think she was an absolutely super cool woman, one I greatly admire. But like I said, 1,000 years ago, now we still have writings that she was offer. She was a poet, she was a musician, you can still find compositions that she made, but she was also a song. Now, that's not typically what I say about, but what I did like about it, she was a person. To the top.
town that we have here on the port side is Niederheimbach. And there is a castle. You can almost not see it because it's the backdrop is kind of the same as the castle, and it's covered by ivy and by bushes and trees. It's called Heimburg Castle. It's 14th century. It's privately owned, by the way, so people still live here. And I knew the person who lived here. Yeah, we had in 2016 we had a sailor. Her name was Annika, and Annika grew up in the castle, and she would watch all the ships pass by, and she decided she wanted to become a captain. So everybody has a start as a sailor. She's not a captain now, but that's because she became a mother in the meantime. And then I always wonder, these people in these colorful houses next to the train track, I always wonder, how well do you actually sleep? Because I cannot even imagine that that with all that noise, and they must be really well insulated. If not, probably you could use it, but you see how often trains are passing by. What you also see there now is docked is a ferry, because, ladies and gentlemen, you probably have noticed there are no bridges. In fact, between Mainz and Koblenz there are 0 bridges in order not to spoil the scenery. So if you want to go from one side to the other, you either take the car ferry that we are just passing by, or you have to drive. And let's say if you are taking the road next to the river, well, that is going to take you a good hour and a half, maybe even longer. And if you take the highway, it takes about an hour in between. And that is the reason. Those inlets that we see on the port side coming up, why are those? They break the waves, ladies and gentlemen. And if we wouldn't have it, eventually the sediment that is underneath our ships, they will start blocking up the strait. We need a strait in order to keep on sailing. Once we are in the Netherlands, you will see more of these inlets, those rock inlets that are wave breakers. Now there's a cool story to tell you about this town. In 1919, exactly to be precise, 10th of January 1919, this little town declared itself as the capital of, pay attention, the Free State of Bottleneck. And what is that? After World War I, the victorious powers, they marked their occupation zones with circles, with calibers, around Mainz, Koblenz, and Cologne. And these were the British, the French, and the American forces. Now, and this area here stayed out of those zones, and the area was shaped as a bottleneck. And at a certain moment, the people thought, you know what? Now we're going to found our own country. So that's what they did, and they declared themselves, like I said, and they called themselves the Free State of Bottleneck. They even had stamps, they had passports, they were planning to open up an embassy, but after 4 years, so exactly 100 years ago, this ended because they were annexed by Germany again, and and then this whole cute story was over. By the way, they didn't have roads in those times, so you only way to approach this little town was to come by waterway, by a boat, by a ship. Yeah, quite interesting. Let's talk about what is in the river and around the river. Now, what type of fish do you find here? You find bream and pike and perch, little bass. But for example, what you also find since about 5 years ago is salmon again. It used to be more salmon in those times, but they extinguished, and that was because of all those power plants that you have more upstream, and they started to dispose their chemicals and their cooling waters into the river, and the salmon was quite, susceptible to that, and so they died out. 5 years ago, they decided to reintroduce the salmon, see if that works, and it worked. So you have it right here. When it comes to commercial fishing, though, I never see that happening. So I'm thinking, if I know well, that they're just doing farmed fish here. I do know on the Moselle River there are some fish farms, for example, for trout and for eel, but so far nothing for floating on the Rhine, because again, it is right in the middle of the Rhine. There's also a great legend to tell you about this one. And the story is about three gentlemen. The first one in the story is the emperor. His name was Frederick I, also known as Barbarossa, because of, you guessed it, his red beard. The second person in the story is his cousin, Duke Henry the Lion Senior. And then the third person is actually, it's more about him, that's Count Conrad. And in those times, the emperor and the duke, Henry and Barbarossa, they were, as I said, cousins, but they couldn't stand each other. There was a big feud between the two of them, and basically you were on team emperor or on team duke. On team emperor was Count Conrad. Now the story is actually about Count Conrad's daughter, and her name was Agnes. At a certain moment, Agnes was reaching marrying age, which was 18 in those times, and he was hoping she would marry someone with wealth and prestige, just like we heard before. Again, unfortunately for her father, she was madly in love, but with Henry the Lion Jr. Now, when her father found out that two of them were secretly seeing each other, that is when he said, "I forbid you to ever see him again," because he was afraid for the reaction of the emperor. But of course, love cannot be stopped. So the two of them were secretly seeing each other still. And after a couple of months, he realized again what was happening. Unfortunately for him, his wife was on the side of their daughter. And he decided in desperation to exile his wife and his daughter to this castle on this island, thinking, that they would be safe from the advances of Henry. Of course, this was completely stupid, because they only needed a boat. And this is exactly what happened one night. Henry rowed its way to the island, and then the two lovebirds were reunited. Her mother witnessed their happiness and decided to give them her blessing. And then a couple nights later, a priest was rowed to the island as well, and the two were secretly wed. Now the story jumps several months later, and at that moment, Agnes and her mother invited their father/husband to come to the island. He thought, well, they're finally able to concede, and so he decided to go there. When he got there, though, he realized that he gained a son-in-law, and not just that, but a grandchild as well. And then he got confused, because at the same time he was overjoyed being a grandfather, but on the other hand, he was also fearing the reaction of the emperor. Again, the emperor was the highest in rank. If the emperor says heads off, this is exactly what would happen. He decided to invite the emperor to the island, fearing his reaction. But when this happened, and the emperor saw, that the happy couple, how they were, and he saw the cute little baby, he decided that he should end this feud with his cousin. So they invited the other grandfather, Duke Henry the Lion Senior. And the three men actually sat together, had a couple of schnapps, had some wine, and then they ended this feud for once and for all. And if you go into this castle, because you never know, maybe you will come back, you can actually see the room where the crib of the baby once stood. because you know why? Also, this is called also the nickname of the Bermuda Triangle of the River Rhine. And here it's, let me tell you the stories. There's actually 3 different stories about Lorelei. The first one is about a king who sung Paris as a result of Lorelei's songs, and he sent soldiers to capture her. But Father Rhine, as a lovely 435-foot cliff with a mighty wave, and deposits her at the bottom safe from the soldiers. So that's number 1. That's the nice story. Number 2 is from 1801 from Clemens Brentana, and he relates the story of a woman who so dazzles the young man in the village that she's accused of witchcraft and sentenced to death. A local bishop who takes pity manages to lead her. Those triangles are about the area that you're approaching. Now, if the left bar is illuminated, it means a ship is approaching of a maximum length of 110 meters, 370 feet. If left and right bar are illuminated, it means a ship is approaching between 110 meters and 135 meters, and that is the size of our ship, also known as 442 feet. If all 3 bars are illuminated, it means an even bigger ship, like a cargo ship, is approaching. And if only the bottom bar is illuminated, then it means in that part of the river on the map, nothing of great importance is approaching. Now, here on the right hand side, you can see the name of the Northern Line. Like I said, this is this big blue formation. And so we are able to also see the statue of the Northern Line. Now, I will say you need quite a good camera for that. Because from our point of view, it's not that big. It is quite big actually, you will see it a little bit later, but again, you know, we're a bit too far away for that. I didn't know that last year there was a competition, and they asked artists to come up with a new design of the Lorelei statue, and they submitted their ideas. And I don't know if it's going to replace this one. This one has been since the 1980s. But you will notice it's bronze, it's green, and it kind of fades away against the background of the bushes and the trees and also of the rocks. Therefore, it's a little bit difficult to spot. don't really work with a lot of terraces, and it used to, you can still see some remnants of former vineyards as well. But try to picture if you were going to work on a vineyard, if going up and down is still easier and also more safe than going sideways. And this is the reason why they build in this way. Now, if you like to have ice wine, then I highly recommend you to go to the United States or to Canada. In fact, around the Finger Lakes in New York State and around Niagara-on-the-Lakes in Canada, they produce excellent ice wine. But what do you need for ice wine? Ice wine is actually a product that is a bit different. It's almost like a late harvest wine. If the vintner is deciding to make ice wine, at the regular harvest, he leaves the grapes on the vineyard. And in order to protect it from migrating birds and also from deer and from wild boar to be eaten by them, he's putting a blue net over them. And then he has to wait, because what you need is for 5 consecutive days and nights, you need to have a minimum temperature of -8 degrees Celsius, which is like 18 Fahrenheit. So that is usually not until December or January. Now, I will say you don't always make ice wine, because sometimes, you know, the temperature doesn't go that low and then your whole crop gets lost. So let's say you can make ice wine. It is the time you have to imagine that those grapes are like raisins. They're very highly concentrated on sugar level, and the residual sugar is quite high in it, and the juice that comes out is a lot less than from regular grapes. For this particular reason, and the fact that you cannot always make ice wine, it is quite expensive to purchase it. Now, German wine always had a very negative reputation. Before I joined Viking, I always thought it was absolute plonk, because I